fish heads, roly-poly fish heads.
Hello everybody, welcome to another True Review, and today I'm bringing you Reborn on the Xbox One. It's priced at $19.99 and has a $5 discount for a 30-day period. It is only available in the US regions, and you lucky people, aren't you glad I play these games because you don't have to, because Reborn is a shocker for all the wrong reasons. So you play as Matthew, spelt only with one T, so if Matthew's watching from the YouTubers High Score Challenge, he's a fellow one T, although I probably wouldn't want this guy to be part of that club, to be honest with you. Now Matthew wakes up in a room where he doesn't know where he is. He's been kidnapped, his head's hurting for some reason, he's having excruciatingly bad headaches. That's never explained why. I thought that was going to be a plot mechanic that was going to evolve into something, but unfortunately it didn't. He doesn't know where he is. He obviously wants to get out of this room, and he seems to have come here with somebody called Shirley. Now I'm not quite clear. I've played through the game twice. That's how dedicated I am to bringing you a proper review of this game. And both occasions I didn't quite grasp who Shirley was. I didn't grasp if it was just an acquaintance, a friend, a relative, a loved one, a girlfriend, or a fiance. Didn't quite grasp that, but that's down to the poor storytelling, which I'll cover later on in the review. But anyway, he wakes up in this room, and his first port of call is to try and get out of this room. All the doors are locked, and that's basically the idea of the game. It's an escape room game. The game's split over 6 very small locations. All of them are rooms, apart from level 2, which is a bit of a corridor, a bit of a network of corridors and a single room. And it's just a simple case of trying to locate the objects in the room to help you open certain locked areas in the same room. Also, there's like pictures, puzzles, drawings, documents that you do find, which gives you clues and keys, or keys in terms of like key codes or cipher codes to figure out the said puzzles of the room. So far so good. You may think it sounds a pretty interesting promise, and it does start off that way. To be honest with you, it does start off very intriguing, but you soon quickly discover that this is a very cumbersome and hard game to play. The biggest issue with the game is its object, how you locate the objects. Your reticule that you control, that you interact with the world with, is a single dot. It's a dot made up of a few pixels, and it's not very big at all, and that leads into the biggest problem. It's very hard to center in on objects, especially some objects which are very, very minute. Like very early on, there's a coin that you have to pick up. I didn't even know it was a pick-upable object, if that's even a word, because it's so small, and the hitbox area to actually interact with that coin is so small. You just miss it. You completely miss it every single occasion. That problem rears its ugly head as well when there's objects within objects. Like for example, there may be a desk which has a number of objects on it, and each of these objects has like a message or a bit of a text description to it. So it highlights red that you can interact with it. But then side by side there is an object that you can pick up. But because they're all merged together, you can't actually differentiate when one hitbox ends and one begins. So again, you miss out on not realizing some objects are able to be collected, and that theme continues throughout the game's 6 rooms, unfortunately, which does obviously pose a problem. You may have some kind of idea what you have to do, and you may know I must be looking for object X, but you can't find object X because the game just won't let you interact with certain stuff on certain occasions because of this silly clumping together of hitboxes. Now, one good thing I would say about the game is that all the puzzles are pleasantly based in logic. I didn't find one puzzle that was just like what the hell were you thinking there? This was so random, it just didn't make sense with the context of what was going on. They are all pretty logical puzzles, even though some of them do take a little bit of brain work, especially one in the kitchen when there's like a blacklight drawings on the ceiling to give you a give you like a code to open one of the doors or one of the locks in the room, and a lot of head scratching was done on that puzzle alone. But there is a bit of grey matter that has to be applied here. But as I say, once you do hit the conclusions, you do realise they are actually all based in logic, which is quite an achievement in itself, really. And I'd probably say the game's biggest positive that you managed to do that and not just rely on random nonsense. Because a game that's
What's going on with the doors
I'm trying to be as fair as I can with it. A game that's not very high quality. I'm surprised they didn't rely on that, to be honest with you, just throwing things together for the sake of it. Another thing with the progression of the game, which is a little bit confusing and a little bit inconsistent, is how the objects are used. Now, generally, any object you find in a room is used within that room, and you lose the object at the end of it. However, some objects are retained for future scenes, but there's no indication of what scene that they're going to come in use for. Now, I did discover, obviously, the reason why I did a second playthrough was because I did discover late on my first playthrough that these objects that you do retain are linked to getting the secret ending. You do retain these objects, and like I say, you combine them with objects in future scenes, and they give you things like keys, parts of keys and stuff like that, which again all lead, if you get them all, to unlocking the final and true ending of the game. And then the other inconsistency with the items is that items that would be useful in this scenario are disposed of or lost for no reason other than the game just takes them away from you. For example, you've obviously been kidnapped by a maniac who's walking around with a fish on his head. So you find a knife early on, you find a screwdriver early on. These are items that I would say would be highly useful in the future, but yet you leave a scene and you lose the items entirely. And that problem is even compounded even more when certain puzzles are repeated. For example, in the first scene there's a screwdriver puzzle. You have to find the handle and the head of the screwdriver, combine it together so you can unscrew the battery compartment of a clock, which gives you a key. Now, that identical puzzle is repeated in scene 3 as well, and you again have to find the two parts of the screwdriver to unlock a clock to obtain an item from the battery compartment. The question is, why not retain the screwdriver from the scene 1? Why did you get rid of it? Same with knives, you find several knives throughout the game. If I had a maniac with a fish in his head, I'd be certainly retaining a knife or some kind of stabbing weapon, especially a screwdriver. That could be very useful for prying things over. But no, Matthew decides to dispose of all useful items and just carry over bizarre, seemingly meaningless items across with him from scene to scene. Now, from a technical standpoint, games also it runs fine. I didn't suffer any crashes, but there is abysmal screen tearing throughout this game. Every time you turn, there's the screen just, you've got that ripple across the screen all the time, constantly. Every single turn of your head, you do have that, and it's not very good, really. It doesn't perform very well, and especially for a game that is such low graphical quality for this generation of consoles, it's not forgivable, to be honest with you. I mean, I really do hate wailing on these small companies because they are only a small company, but when you decide to charge $20 for your game, you're setting yourself out there to be providing a game of a certain quality, and this falls shockingly short of the mark on all fronts other than the puzzles being based in logic. The final thing is the sound. There's screams, there's abysmal voice acting, which is, it's terrible. It's one of the worst voice actings I can see. There's just no sense of urgency in the delivery of the script. The script's equally abysmal as well, and doesn't make an awful lot of sense because the story doesn't tend to go anywhere. The actors they're just not in that situation. You can just tell they are not in that situation. They've just been given a piece of paper to read off of, and given no context to what situation their character's in. It's just woefully bad. I mean, we're going back to like original Resident Evil kind of levels of acting here, but on this occasion, this is not going to develop into a classic, unfortunately. one thing the game may get quite a lot of attention from is that it is relatively easy achievements. I mean, I played through the game solving the puzzles myself without using solutions, but I would guess by now there is solutions out there on how to solve all the puzzles, and it's a very, very quick game. You're probably looking at a couple of hours, maybe 3 hours tops, if you do get stuck on some of the more mind-bending puzzles you have to get your head around there. But if you follow a solution, you're probably looking at an hour's gameplay tops again on this one, and there's very little replayability value. I mean, even though there is a secret ending, I did do a second playthrough. If you did miss that on the first occasion, you're really not that bothered about getting the true ending, to be honest with you, and it is totally forgettable once you do see that as well. So like I say, I really do hate wailing on these little guys here, because other than the puzzles being logical, there's not an awful lot of redeeming features about this game, to be honest with you. And the biggest mystery for me is why it's called Die and Reborn. It's just, I just don't know. It just doesn't explain that to you at all. But yeah, setting themselves up for a fall straight away by charging $20 for this. I mean, I wouldn't even recommend this at half the price, if I'm honest with you, because it is just it's just so bad in too many areas. And regrettably, and I hate giving out this rating to any game, because I want every game to be good, but it is a definite avoid, I'm afraid, for Dying Reborn. So thanks for watching, guys. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe and share the video, and I'll catch you in the next review. Thanks for watching.